At the Houston Chronicle, staff reporter Stephen Johnson has investigated what is known as the McCoy Goode sighting. His research is now on the Chronicle's website.
And this was a 1965 sighting, and these were two Brazoria County deputy sheriffs, very upright, stalwart law enforcement officers. And their sighting was investigated by the Air Force. It was reviewed by many private UFO researchers, and their reputation was such that nobody ever really questioned their testimony about what they saw, and what they saw was very amazing.
Using the information on the website, sightings traveled to the sleepy Texas town of Columbia. It was here that we met up with eyewitness Billy McCoy. McCoy has long since retired from the sheriff's department, but there are still vivid memories of a terrifying night shift he worked with partner Bob Goode. It was a night that began with an alligator bite.
Bob's an ex-game warden, and he had a little small 2 or 3 foot alligator in one pond. He said he was moving that alligator from that pond to another one, and it had bit him on the finger. And he unwrapped his finger and showed it was all red, swollen down the back, and red inflamed, kind of seeping, bloody-looking water out of it. Looked pretty bad. At about 11 o'clock or shortly after 11, we had come back onto Highway 36, and I noticed this brilliant light back over towards the San Bernard River area. A smaller blue light seemed to appear right out of it and go a short ways from it and stopped. I called Bob's attention to it, so we pulled over to the side of the road, and that thing was right on top of us. We heard no sound. The purple light was pulsating. It completely inundated us in the patrol car. But I yelled, he yelled. It shot directly back, made an abrupt 90-degree turn, and went straight up and disappeared.
And this is where that alligator bite becomes significant to the story.
Mr. Goode had the wounded hand out the car window during the time of the sighting, when this very warm, oddly colored light shone on them from the object above. Mr. Goode's claim is that later in the evening, his finger seemed to be healed.
And I made the statement, Bob, the good thing that happened about all this is it made you forget about your finger hurting. And he said, you know, that thing's not even sore. And he unwrapped his finger. The swelling was gone. He threw the bandage away, and the next day it was just almost like nothing had happened to his finger.
Another fascinating component of this close encounter came 2 days later when Deputy Goode was approached by 2 mysterious men. This was one of the first documented cases of what we now refer to as the Men in Black.
2 guys showed up at the courthouse and asked to speak with the deputies who had had this sighting. They were wearing dark suits and derby hats. Bob says almost immediately these guys started telling him what had happened to us. They told him that if we had stopped and had not run from that craft, it would have landed. We would have been greeted by people much like we are. We would have been invited aboard and taken for a ride and brought back unharmed. We got to wondering about these guys, and nobody had sent anyone down that we could find to interview us about it. The Men in Black seemed to show up and visit people who had actually seen a UFO, and the government admits this has happened. So I'm just assuming that what happened to us is what happened to other people.
Air Force personnel from Project Blue Book investigated the sighting.
The Air Force determined there was no ground fog. The moon was almost full. They could find nothing to cause our story not to be true.
Billy McCoy remembers that he took a lot of heat from the other deputies for not confronting the UFO.
Well, you know, we had guns in the car, had guns on our side. A lot of people have said, gosh, why didn't you shoot at it? Well, you're trying not to shoot at something you don't know what it is, if you don't know what it is.
After observing the UFO at close range for more than 15 minutes, Billy McCoy and Bob Goode could draw only one conclusion.
I have not seen anything that would lead me to believe that we were not being viewed by some craft from another world.
And I believe the investigating officer himself concluded that these gentlemen were eminently believable, and that despite the strangeness of it, these individuals were telling the truth.
In the 1960s, credible witnesses like McCoy and Zamora were effectively silenced by the threats of mysterious strangers. But now that all of the Blue Book files from their sightings have been declassified and serious researchers are examining the cases, the major players in the great close encounters of the past are coming forward to once again say, watch the skies.
On the back roads of Brazoria County, somewhere between Damon and West Columbia along Highway 36, they still talk about a pair of purple and blue lights. It's the story of these two men, Brazoria deputies Bob Goode and Billy Edwin McCoy. The year was 1965. Do you remember it?
I remember the excitement.
Kevin McCoy is Billy McCoy's son. He was 8 years old when those lights interrupted his dad's life.
Dad said what he remembered more than anything. He said it just absolutely scared the hell out of him.
The story that starts on a rural country road is also heavily detailed in government documents, and it goes something like this. It was 11 o'clock at night. The men were in their squad car together, traveling from Damon to West Columbia. They say it hovered over them. The lights filled the inside of their squad car, and they swore that the ship was over them, a football field long. And they even drew this picture of it for investigators to see.
They just were scared to death whenever this thing came, and they were screaming, "Go, go, get out of here, get out of here."
Was he always convinced that he'd seen something real?
Oh, absolutely. He firmly believed from the time he saw it until the day he died it was real. No doubt.
We missed our chance to talk to the men about that UFO. They're both gone. Billy McCoy, at 86, died just last year. But at the Brazoria County Historical Museum, Billy McCoy has his own file.
My name is Billy Edwin McCoy.
And it includes his own voice, a tape recording from 1985.
That thing was right on top of us. The inside of our car was totally illuminated with that purple light.
And to his dying day, he did believe what he saw was real.
If anyone ever sees what we saw that night, there will never be any question in your mind about something being there. Of course, there was quite a bit of excitement in our car. There was quite a bit of hollering and yelling. There were some words said that probably shouldn't be repeated on this tape. It's so vivid in my mind that I think I could live to be 150 and I'd never forget it.
But miles away at a house in Rosenberg.
Here's Texas. Look at all those cases.
UFO investigator Chuck Stansberg says the Brazoria deputies had to deal with a skeptical government, just like everyone else in the more than 12,000 UFO sightings investigated for Project Blue Book.
From what I've read, they seem pretty adamant about what took place.
A program designed to document UFO sightings, but disprove them as lights reflecting on fog or figments of everyone's imagination.
Too many people in this world know that they exist, and yet the governments, especially ours, say no, they don't exist.
In that audio interview, Billy McCoy talked about that too.
Not a thing that I have said was a figment of anybody's imagination. It was not a concocted story in any extent. The things happened just as I said they happened.
And what makes this story live on these 50 years later is that both men were well respected. McCoy, a high school athlete, a Golden Gloves boxer, a chief deputy, a businessman who kept telling his tale and taking on any critics who might dare to call him a liar.
I think that he was cool with it. I think that he firmly believed it, and anytime anybody brought it up, he loved talking about it. He never questioned himself. He never said maybe. I've never heard him say anything other than absolutely, we saw something.
Something they still talk about in Brazoria County, and that in a way Billy McCoy still talks about to anyone willing to listen.
I don't believe it could possibly be anything from this earth.
I noticed a bright purple light over there that looked like it was right on the horizon. We were talking about various things, and I called this light to Mr. Goode's attention, knowing that he was real familiar with that area over there. And he said, well, it's probably a light on a pumping station or a light over to a ranch. They've been putting quite a few of those mercury vapor lights in. And I said, well, it just looked too purple to be a mercury vapor light to me. And we continued driving, didn't stop at that time. And I kept watching the light, and as we traveled down the highway, there appeared to be a blue light just seemed to appear right out of this purple light. We were just almost parallel with the light. And as we drove, well, this light, the blue light, seemed to move further over to the right. We pulled over on the right-hand side of the road and stopped and got out and looked at the light briefly. The blue light had moved a good ways from the purple light at this time. We made a U-turn there and stopped on the other side of the highway and got out and looked at these lights through binoculars. At this time, the lights seemed to float up in the air, just a very few degrees above the horizon, and just hang suspended there. So we got back in the car to drive back towards Damon to take one of the back roads to go over towards the San Bernard River to see if we could get closer to it. And we had driven, I guess, about a half a mile back towards Damon. We almost stopped again. We didn't pull off the highway. We just barely creeping. There was no traffic on the highway, and Goode had his window down on his side. And he observed the lights again with the binoculars, and they seemed to still be in the same position as they were. So he laid the binoculars down and said, well, you watch it, and I'll drive on back that way. And just as we started up, he said, are the other lights still there? And I said, man, they're not there. They're right here on us. Well, the object had moved just in a blink of an eye, it seemed like, where they were to right beside the highway. The purple light was illuminating the inside of a patrol car, ground all around us. And here this thing was, just about looked like it wasn't any more than 100, 150 feet in the air. It was right at the side of the highway, completely motionless. There was a bright, almost full moon, almost directly overhead. The moon illuminated the object. We could see the outline very distinctly. We could see the shadow on the ground underneath it, and my gosh, it looked like a football field.